So, let's continue the fun and dive into the registration login.html page. The register login HTML page in the Flask web application facilitates user registration and login, integrating with several backend components to handle user authentication. Below, we will take a walkthrough of the code and understand its interactions with the associated JavaScript, auth.js, and relevant Flask routes in routes.py. This file contains the HTML structure for both the registration and login forms, which are dynamically shown or hidden based on user interaction. It also links to the auth.js script that handles form submissions. So, we start with container for the login form. The form will have labels and inputs for email, password, and a submit button to login. It also has a register link for a user who has not registered. Next, if one has not registered yet, there will be a link to register which will show the hidden registration form. Below that, there is the container for the registration form, which is initially hidden and be revealed when the registration link is clicked above. Let's now go to the auth.js file and understand the JavaScript functions for this page. This JavaScript file handles the client-side logic for the registration and login forms, making API calls to the Flask backend and handling the responses. So, the first line is to ensure that the JavaScript only runs after the full HTML document has loaded. The next line retrieves and stores references to the login and registration forms. Then, over at login.form.addEventListener, it adds an event listener to the login form to handle submissions. At the event.preventDefault, it prevents the default form submission action. And below that, it calls the login user function when the form is submitted. Next, we also have a form that adds an event listener to the registration form to handle submissions. Below that, we also have something to prevent the default form submission action, and for the register user, it calls the register user function when the form is submitted. Next, we also have the function to log in the user using credentials provided in the form. Below that, we also retrieve user input from the form fields. Next, there is also sending the user email and the password as a JSON. And then we also have the passes the JSON response from the server. Next, we also display an alert if login fails. Add the alert login failed plus data message. And for this part here, we catch and log any errors during the process. Below that, there is also the function to register a new user using inputs provided in the form. And we also have retrieving user inputs from the form fields. Next, we have an if loop to check if the password and confirmation password match, and if it does not, it gives an alert. Next, we send a post request to the server with the new user's details. At the body, it sends the user details as JSON. Then below that, it also passes the JSON response from the server. Next, it alerts the user of successful registration and redirects to the profile page. That's right below else, we have the display an alert if registration fails. Finally, we have a catch error here to catch and log any error during the processes. To add on to that, there is also a utility function to show the registration form and hide the login form. All the way here at the end, there is a utility function to hide the registration form and show the login form. Next, Let's see the routes.py file and how the routes are being defined. So first off, we have to import the necessary libraries and modules with import OS. Next, we also have to import it is to interact with the operating system, such as the file paths. Next, we also have to import Flask components for handling requests, responses, and templates. We also have import bcrypt, which is a library for hashing passwords to enhance security. We also have importing the database models to interact with the database. Below that, we also have importing the datetime and time delta to handle the date and time operations. Below that, we also have the form import db, which is importing the database instance for database operations. Next, in the blueprint here, we create a blueprint named main to organize related views and other code. Here is the blueprint setup, which is the name and denotes the name of the module where the blueprint is located. Next, we also have the route for handling the login functionality. And then after that, we have the retrieving the JSON data from the incoming request. Below that, there's the user part, which queries the database for a user with the specified email. Then below that, we have a session user ID equals to user ID, which sets the user ID in the session to log the user in. Below that, we have a returning a success message. For the next return, it returns an error message if the login fails. Over here, we have the route for handling user registration. Below that, we also have to retrieve the JSON data from the incoming request with this statement. Below that, there's also the user part, which checks if the email is already in use. It returns an error if the email is already registered. The next part here is to hash the user's password for secure storage. Below that, there is creating a new password at the new user over here. And then after that, we also add the new user to the database, as well as committing the transaction to the database. Then, the next part sets the user ID in the session. Next, the return JSONify status returns a success message. So, this detailed walkthrough provides a comprehensive explanation and should allow for a clear understanding of how the JavaScript and server-side Python interact to manage user authentication and session control in this Flask application, handling both login and registration functionalities. That completes the register login HTML functionality from front-end to back-end access. In the next video, we will explore the profile page functionality. See you there.